I want to know from Coach Carson why he thinks people don't get started investing in real estate. Is it
Hmm.
lack of money? Is it fear? Is it self doubt? Is it misunderstandings? When we look at the pool of folks that come into our universe, there are lots of folks that just don't get started, and I want to know what Chad thinks. Buddy, how you doing?
Doing very well, Michael. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. I love having you. I love having these conversations. You're doing this a long time, helping thousands and thousands of people. And I got to ask, why do you think it is people just don't get started?
Yeah, the first word that came to me was fear. Although I think everything you just mentioned, I'm thinking of individuals who had some kind of quality, but I think we could peel the layers back a little bit. Ultimately, fear is a big one. I mean, we're all human beings. We're all animals who have these emotions, and real when it comes down to it, real estate investing is a decision that has bigger stakes than seemingly some of the other investments you can make. Like you can go buy a stock and put $100 in just to dip your toe in the water, buy $100 of the S&P 500, and oh, okay, let's see how this works. You can kind of understand how under the hood how it works. Real estate's a little different. I mean, it's like this. It's like you're taking this leap over this chasm. It feels like, at least, and you're all in. Like the down payment, the debt, the consequences of buying in a certain location. So I just think that magnitude, that feeling of magnitude of buying real estate is just a little different than even maybe starting a business. Like I know when I've started businesses, I've found ways to get in with, not a lot of risk. Not let's just test this out. Let's sell it to one customer. Let's figure it out. I don't know. I think to me that's like the top layer is just that real estate's a little bit different animal. It
Hmm.
has pluses and minuses to that, but the you can't kind of halfway do it. Like you've actually
Yeah.
you got to really take that step. Otherwise, you're not in.
Yeah. So let's peel that back and because again, when I sort of look out there, the world that we try to help motivate, encourage, sometimes we have to realize where the message is not being received, right? If we put it out there as a teacher or a coach, but it's not being received correctly, that's on us,
Mm-hmm.
right? Our message is needs to be different. So I think there's a lot of people out there, then we'll just use the word fear because it's one of those 4-letter words. And I think something that that we as advisors, coaches, mentors, whatever you want to call us, could do is kind of address that head on. And when I think about the fear, again, trying to break down the layers, there's kind of the fear, like there's people today that were directly or indirectly hurt by the Great Recession. Maybe they didn't lose a property, but their parents did, or their aunts or uncles, and they've heard the horror stories. And all they know is so and so bought something, lost something. It was a horrible outcome. That's that's real, right? That's a real thing that we need to acknowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. Experience your personal experiences, and sometimes the secondhand experiences are even worse because
Yeah.
you don't know all the details of what went into that, right? Because when you make your own decisions, you're going to get to choose the location, like all the stuff you teach and I teach as well. You're going to choose every part of your process, where you invest, the type of investing, the type of financing you get, the type of property you buy, how much down payment you make. I mean, those are all
Yeah.
decisions that we know this that affects the success of your decision. But for a kid or for a secondhand family member watching our uncle or our mom or dad or
Yeah.
brother, lose a property. I mean, that's real. That it makes an impression on you.
No, absolutely. And again, there's a lot of folks that are carrying that baggage. I've seen it in relationships where somebody, like maybe the wife wants to do real estate, but the husband doesn't, or vice versa. There's real history that people need to talk about. Now, what I would advise people, again, in most instances that went through that, and I've had hundreds of these conversations, the crux of the matter was the debt was the problem, not the house.
Yeah.
It's the debt that blew up that caused the house, and the whole, you know, you go watch The Big Short and realize, it was just an era that likely, hopefully, will never be repeated. The other thing around fear is these devices that most of us carry with us. Most of us have some, if not many, social media apps on them. It is a reflection of what you believe. And there's a lot of folks, Chad, that have gravitated to doom, crash bros, economic collapse. The world is out to get you. That they don't realize that these content creators are simply capitalists that are tapping into the vein of fear
Yeah.
because it pays well,
Mhm.
right? Some of these guys who are preaching crash bros are trying to buy a home. I mean, how wild is that to think about? They're just content creators that tapped into a vein that are okay selling their soul for a penny a click. It's crazy.
Yeah, agree. And I think my comment on that too, and I've noticed just from talking to you, it seems like you have a pretty good schedule where you're kind of you quarantine your life into certain segments. I know I've done this too. And this is something I think I tapped into this early on in my career because the internet sort of magnified this, but this has always been a thing, whether you're watching
Mm.
news or reading newspapers or just gossiping with your friends, there's
Yeah.
always going to be this kind of negative kind of vibe coming. I found that you have to look at yourself as an entrepreneur, and as an entrepreneur, your number one asset is the information, what's in between your two ears, like in your brain, the attitude, the mindset, the thoughts. And if you got to look at it like this input device, like if you input garbage in, if you input negative vibes in, and particularly what time of day you do that. Like for me, I had this little 1 to 2 hour period in the morning that's just sacred space. Like that's when I'm getting ready. It's almost like you're warming up a vehicle. Like you got to warm your mind up a little bit. And I know this has nothing to do with real estate, but to me, it's like everything to do with it is how you approach your mindset and the schedule you have. And like, do you have habits? Do you like, I don't know, you don't have to exercise, but most people I know who are pretty successful do some kind of walking, some kind of
Mhm.
exercise, like all of that stuff put together matters in your confidence level of making an offer on a property. Like it really does, because if you've been feeding your brain 2 hours of nonsense and crash bro stuff for the first 2 hours of the morning, like
Yeah.
there's no way you're going to make a confident offer on a property and use your brain and your creativity. Like you've got to deliberately architect your day and your life in a way that your time, your energy, your focus is in the right spot, because this is not just a real estate thing. Every athlete I've known, I played football in college. I mean, people are like super guarded about what goes in their head and what goes in their schedule, and they don't tolerate a lot of the nonsense, a lot of the crap that comes into people's life, into their day. They're just like, no, that I got a lock on my door, and that doesn't come in.
Yeah, that doesn't serve me, so I'm just gonna leave it there and just move on. Not judge anybody for it, but just not move on because
Yeah,
it doesn't serve me. And the last thing when I think about folks that come into our world that don't kind of do the work and make, forward momentum is just self-doubt. And that's hard for me because I think real estate investing is a skill. And because it's a skill, Chad, I believe it can be learned by anyone. It's a skill that everybody could be better at. You and I included, right? We're still
yes,
investing, we're still learning. We're just a little bit better every day. We just have, 10 or 20 years of experience. So those little improvements,
yeah,
they compound to a big number. I I I want I if I could do one thing for people in our world is I just want to give them belief that it's possible. It's real estate investing is always hard, but it's always possible. And some people just don't see it. They think it's just can't be done today. Sorry, can't be done today. Oh, it's not true.
yeah. I've gotten dozens of I've been reading my YouTube comments the last couple of days, catching up. I mean, it's like 25% or can't be done, can't be done.
Yeah.
And I don't.
Yeah.
There's two little quick stories. Like one is about my daughters. I coach their volleyball and like youth soccer and volleyball, and it's amazing to me how we adults are just big kids. We the same. I have these little kids who are learning how to serve in volleyball, and they're awful at first. Like they
Oh,
can't even, like, if the ball falls out of their hand and they're like talk about self-doubt. They're just like, oh, I can't do this. And you know what we have to do as coaches? You have to like start with little bitty steps. Say, all right, let's just learn how to hold it in your hand. And let's just do like the first step. We're not going to try to hit it over the net. We're just going to we're just going to hold it in our hand. And then you get with that part and then you put another piece together. And it's the same way. The second story is like learning a language. My daughters and my wife and I moved to Spain, and it's overwhelming. And talk about self-doubt when you're trying to go speak to
yeah.
someone who's a native speaker, and you thought you knew Spanish until you go out and try to say something, and they're like, blah, 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 blah. And
Yeah.
then you don't know you don't know anything they
Ah!
said. And so I guess my point here is like we have been learning to do these kind of things our whole life. And all of a sudden we get into real estate, and because of that magnitude I talked about, I think we kind of freeze. We're adults. We're not supposed to be silly little kids who make mistakes and who act like an idiot. Like when I'm learning language, you have to be willing to make a mistake. And to me, when I'm coaching people, it's like, all right, let's break this entire big process down in these little bitty steps, do the work, like you say. Let's just do the work on a very low risk step. Let's go to the neighborhood. Let's call somebody. Let's talk to a real estate agent. Let's even make an offer and have a deposit that's, you might lose $1,000 on your deposit. Worst case scenario, like if you can break it down in these pieces where it's not quite a chasm, but it's these little baby steps, just like the little girl learning how to serve, like then you can develop confidence and prove to yourself that, yeah, I could do something bigger now, and I'm not so scared of it.
Yeah, I think that is the key, because when I think about all the people that come to me with kind of self-doubt, I think you're right. I think it is that kid. It is, learning to serve. It is learning a language. Because most people, when I ask them, hey, did you ever learn to play an instrument? Have you learned a second language? Or have you learned a new sport? Most people say yes.
Yeah.
And I say, great. How did you do that? Well, I practiced, right? I did the little things. I knew where to put my hands. I learned the nouns and the verbs and the conjugation or whatever it is for the thing. And I'm like, you know what? Real estate investing is the same thing. It's just a series of little steps that ultimately get you. Don't just decide to do something and suddenly you're a landlord. Man, there's hundreds of steps in order to get you there. So I think you break it down pretty well. I think that's awesome.
People can do it. This isn't rocket science. Yes, there's some things to learn, but I promise you, like this is like adding and subtracting. This is like middle school level in terms of just right. It's not rocket science. So that's my message. You've all done a lot harder things than real
Yeah,
estate. You can do this.
I agree with that. You've done a lot harder things in life than learning how to invest in real estate. Chad, where can people find you?
I'm at coachcarson.com, or if you're watching me on YouTube, as most people are, just search Coach Carson and you'll find my channel. Love to connect with you there.
Awesome. Folks, send him a note. Tell him you came from One Rental at a Time. So he knows his time with us each week is worth it. Thanks, bud.
Thank you, Michael.